You think you know history. Think again. Beneath the velvet gowns and glittering tiaras of Europe's longest reigning dynasty, the Habsburgs, lay a hidden power. While men often took the spotlight, it was their wives, daughters, and sisters who truly shaped empires, defied expectations, and left marks more profound than any king's decree. Forget what you learned in textbooks. Get ready to meet the real forces behind the throne. The women who ruled from the shadows, commanded armies, sparked revolutions, and even pioneered scientific fields. Their stories are wilder than anything on screen, and their legacies still echo today. Number 10. Archduchess Maria Anna of Austria, Queen of Portugal. Born in 1683, Maria Anna arrived into a world dominated by dynastic ambition and political maneuvering. As the daughter of Emperor Leopold I, her life was mapped out from birth, not by her own desires, but by the needs of the vast Habsburg Empire. Her childhood in Vienna was steeped in the rigid etiquette of the imperial court, a place of grand ceremonies and hushed conspiracies. She learned the languages, the customs, and the quiet art of observation that would serve her later in life. She watched as her older sister Maria Antonia married the Elector of Bavaria, a union meant to strengthen alliances and absorb the lessons of these high-stakes diplomatic chess games. The expectation for Maria Anna was clear. She too would be a piece in this grand European scheme, destined for a marriage that benefited her powerful family. This was the silent understanding for all Habsburg princesses, a destiny ingrained from their earliest days. Her moment arrived when negotiations began for her marriage to John V of Portugal. Portugal was a rising maritime power, its wealth flowing from Brazil and its vast colonial empire. A union with the Habsburgs would solidify political ties and offer strategic advantages in the ongoing European power struggles. The wedding took place in Lisbon in 1708, a magnificent affair of pomp and circumstance befitting the union of two royal houses. Maria Anna stepped into her new role as queen consort, a position that on the surface seemed to primarily involve bearing heirs and maintaining a splendid court. But Maria Anna was not merely a decorative figure. She possessed a keen intellect and a deep sense of duty, qualities that would soon be tested as Queen Maria Anna fulfilled her primary duty, giving birth to several children, including the future King Joseph I. She also became a patron of religious orders and charitable institutions, a common role for queens, but she approached it with genuine piety and organizational skill. Her court was known for its adherence to strict decorum, reflecting her Habsburg upbringing. Yet beneath this veneer of traditional queenship, Maria Anna was quietly observing, learning the intricacies of Portuguese politics, and understanding the personalities that surrounded her husband. She built relationships with key figures in the court and church, always with a quiet dignity that earned her respect. The true test of Maria Anna's capabilities arrived in 1742. King John V, after years of declining health, suffered a severe stroke. The king became gravely ill, losing his ability to speak and govern effectively. The court was thrown into turmoil. With no clear line of succession ready to take over, and the king incapacitated, a vacuum of power threatened to destabilize the kingdom. It was at this critical juncture that Maria Anna stepped forward. Against the advice of some who preferred to keep the power entirely within the male lineage, she was appointed regent. This was a rare and significant move for a queen consort, especially in a time when female rule was still often viewed with suspicion. Maria Anna embraced the regency with a seriousness that surprised many. She understood the weight of responsibility that had fallen upon her shoulders. Portugal's economy, heavily reliant on gold from Brazil, faced challenges, and the kingdom needed strong, consistent leadership. Maria Anna presided over the Council of State, listened intently to her advisors, and made decisions with a calm resolve. She focused on maintaining stability, carefully managing the royal finances, and ensuring the smooth administration of the vast Portuguese empire. Her regency was marked by prudence and a measured approach, avoiding drastic changes but ensuring that the kingdom continued to function effectively. One of Maria Anna's key strengths as regent was her ability to maintain a semblance of normalcy at court, despite the king's illness. She continued to host diplomatic receptions, ensuring that foreign ambassadors perceived Portugal as a stable and well-governed nation. Her diplomatic skills honed during her upbringing proved invaluable in navigating the complex web of European relations. She understood the importance of appearances, but also the necessity of substance behind those appearances. She meticulously reviewed state papers, corresponded with governors in the colonies, and ensured that the decrees of the monarchy were carried out without question. The period of her regency was not marked by grand military campaigns or dramatic reforms. Instead, it was a time of quiet competence. Maria Anna steered the ship of state through calm waters, providing the stability that Portugal desperately needed. Her actions ensured a smooth transition of power upon her husband's eventual death in 1750, preparing her son Joseph to ascend the throne without major disruption. Her years as regent so quite a woman who, despite being placed in her position by birth and marriage, rose to the occasion of true leadership when circumstances demanded it. She demonstrated that influence could be wielded not just through grand pronouncements, but through consistent steady governance and a profound dedication to duty. Maria Anna, the Habsburg princess who became Queen and Regent of Portugal, quietly shaped the kingdom's destiny during a vulnerable period, leaving a legacy of stability and unwavering resolve. Number 9. Empress Zita of Bourbon-Parma. Born in 1892, Princess Zita of Bourbon-Parma came from a sprawling, devoutly Catholic family with connections to many of Europe's royal houses. Her childhood was spent across various grand estates, largely in Italy and Austria. She received a thorough education, fluent in multiple languages, and imbued with a deep sense of religious faith and dynastic duty. Her upbringing instilled in her a stoicism and resilience that would define her incredibly long and tumultuous life. She met her future husband, Archduke Charles of Austria, a nephew of Emperor Franz Joseph. During their childhood, their connection deepened over time, and they married in 1911, a union described as one of genuine affection, a rarity in royal matches of the era. Their early years together were relatively quiet, marked by the birth of their first child, Otto. Charles was not expected to become emperor, as there were several older heirs ahead of him in the line of succession. This gave Zita a chance to settle into her role as a loving wife and mother, away from the intense scrutiny of the imperial court. But fate had a different plan. In 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir apparent, was assassinated in Sarajevo, an event that plunged Europe into the First World War. Suddenly, Charles found himself next in line to the throne. The quiet life they had known evaporated, replaced by the crushing weight of imperial responsibility in a world rapidly descending into chaos. In 1916, Emperor Franz Joseph died, and Charles ascended to the throne as Emperor Charles I of Austria and King Charles IV of Hungary. Zita, at just 24 years old, became Empress and Queen, thrust into the heart of a dying empire. Embroiled in a devastating global conflict, she quickly proved to be far more than just a consort. She attended council meetings, read state papers, and engaged directly in political discussions with her husband, advisors, and foreign diplomats. Charles greatly valued her counsel, often referring to her as his wise partner. She worked tirelessly alongside him, supporting his efforts to find a peaceful end to the war, even engaging in secret diplomatic initiatives, such as the Sixtus Affair, an attempt to negotiate a separate peace with the allies to her brother, Prince Sixtus of Bourbon-Parma. These efforts, though ultimately unsuccessful, highlight her active involvement in the highest levels of imperial policy. As the war raged on, conditions within the empire deteriorated. Food shortages, social unrest, and political disillusionment grew rampant. Zita and Charles visited hospitals, comforted the wounded, and tried to rally their exhausted people. But the forces of history were too strong. In November 1918, facing widespread revolts and the collapse of his armies, Charles was forced to renounce participation in state affairs, effectively abdicating. The ancient Habsburg monarchy, which had ruled for centuries, came to an end. Zita famously declared, "A ruler can never abdicate. He can be dethroned, all right, but abdicate, never." This statement encapsulated her unwavering belief in the divine right of her husband's rule, a conviction she held for the rest of her life. The imperial family was forced into exile. Their journey began in Switzerland and moved to the Portuguese island of Madeira. The transition from ruling an empire to living in straitened circumstances was harsh. Zita, a woman who had known unimaginable luxury, now faced constant financial struggles. Despite these hardships, she maintained an astonishing composure and dignity. In 1922, tragedy struck when Charles, weakened by the privations of exile, died at the age of just 34. Zita was left a widow at 29 with 8 young children and no empire to call home. She dressed in black for the rest of her life as a sign of mourning and devotion to her late husband. Zita dedicated the remainder of her long life to 2 primary goals: raising her children to understand their heritage and responsibilities, and advocating for the restoration of the Habsburg monarchy. She tirelessly campaigned for her eldest son, Otto, to be recognized as the rightful heir to the throne, traveling across Europe, giving interviews, and meeting with political figures. Her efforts kept the idea of a Habsburg restoration alive for decades, even as it seemed increasingly unrealistic. She instilled in her children a strong sense of duty, faith, and their unique place in history, preparing Otto for a role he would never fully assume, but which shaped his own significant political career in post-war Europe. During World War II, Zita and her family fled to North America, first to Quebec and later to the United States, to escape the Nazi occupation of Europe. Even in exile, she continued to work for the cause of a free Austria. She tirelessly lobbied American politicians and spoke out against Hitler's regime. Her steadfastness and dignity in the face of immense personal and historical adversity made her a symbol of resilience for many. Zita finally returned to Austria in 1982 after decades of exile and only after the ban on Habsburgs entering the country was lifted for her. She was welcomed by immense crowds, a testament to the enduring respect and affection many Austrians still held for their last empress. She lived to be 96 years old, dying in 1989, just months before the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the communist regimes in Eastern Europe, events that would have seemed impossible for much of her life. Her life story is a compelling narrative of a woman who, despite the loss of an empire, never lost her belief, her mission influencing generations. Through her unwavering faith, her remarkable strength, and her enduring commitment to her family and her heritage. Number 8. Eleonore of Austria, Queen of France. Born in 1498, Archduchess Eleonore was a daughter of Philip I of Castile and Joanna of Castile. Her lineage was extraordinary, making her a granddaughter of both the Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian I and the Catholic monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain. This meant she was born into the very heart of the rapidly expanding Habsburg dynasty, a family that through a series of strategic marriages was beginning to dominate the map of Europe. Her childhood was spent in the Low Countries, part of her father's vast Burgundian inheritance, where she received an education befitting a princess, destined for a high-stakes dynastic marriage. She learned several languages, courtly manners, and the subtle arts of diplomacy, all preparation for a life dictated by political necessity. Eleanor's most famous brother was Charles V, who would become Holy Roman Emperor and King of Spain, arguably the most powerful monarch of his age. Her relationship with Charles would prove to be a central thread throughout her life, often placing her at the nexus of the major power struggles of 16th century Europe. As a Habsburg princess, her hand in marriage was a valuable commodity, a tool for alliances, and a means to secure peace or influence. Her destiny was not her own, but tied to the grand political maneuvers of her family. Her first major marriage was in 1518 to King Manuel I of Portugal. Manuel was a widower already, having been married twice before, including to Eleanor's older sister, Isabella, who died young. This marriage underscored the Habsburg-Portuguese alliance, crucial for control of sea lanes and colonial wealth. Eleanor became Queen of Portugal, a position she held for only a few years, as Manuel died in 1521. She had 2 children with him, a son who died young, and a daughter. While her time as Queen of Portugal was relatively brief, it initiated her into the demands of queenship and the intricacies of court life in a foreign land. She demonstrated an ability to adapt and perform her duties even in the shadow of her powerful brother. However, it was her second marriage that truly placed Eleanor at the heart of European politics. Following the Battle of Pavia in 1525, where her brother Charles V decisively defeated King Francis I of France and took him captive, negotiations began for the Treaty of Madrid. One of the key terms of this treaty, designed to secure Francis's release and forge a fragile peace, was his marriage to Eleonore. The union was meant to solidify the new, uneasy alliance between the Habsburg and Valois dynasties, 2 families locked in a century-long struggle for supremacy. In 1530, Eleonore became Queen of France. Her position as Queen of France was complex and often difficult. She was a Habsburg in the French court, a living symbol of a peace treaty that was deeply unpopular with many French nobles who felt their king had been humiliated. She was also stepmother to Francis's children from his previous marriage, including the Dauphin, Henry, who would later become Henry II. Despite these challenges, Eleanor tried to navigate her role with grace and dignity. She sought to foster a good relationship with her stepchildren and to establish herself within the French court. She often found herself caught between her loyalties to her brother, the emperor, and to her husband, the king. Eleanor's most significant influence lay in her capacity as an intermediary. She served as a crucial go-between during the many periods of conflict and negotiation between Charles V and Francis I. She used her personal relationships and her access to both monarchs to soften tensions, deliver messages, and facilitate diplomatic efforts. She was present at key diplomatic meetings such as the Ladies' Peace of Cambrai in 1529, which was largely negotiated by her aunt Margaret of Austria and Francis's mother, Louise of Savoy. While her direct political power as queen was limited, her soft diplomacy and familial connections allowed her to exert a quiet yet persistent influence on the volatile relationship. She tried to bridge the immense chasm that separated their 2 warring houses. After Francis I's death in 1547, Eleanor chose to leave France. She traveled to the Low Countries, where she was reunited with her brother Charles V and her sister Mary of Hungary. She eventually accompanied Charles V to Spain, where he retired to a monastery after abdicating his various thrones. Eleanor devoted her final years to religious devotion and remained a close confidant to her brother, sharing his quiet retirement. Her life was a testament to the way Habsburg women were used as political tools. It often found ways to exert their own brand of influence. Eleanor, the twice-crowned queen, shaped history not through grand decrees or military victories, but through quiet diplomacy, unwavering loyalty, and a constant effort to bridge the divides of a turbulent continent, embodying the human face of dynastic politics. Number 7. Leopoldina of Brazil. Maria Leopoldina of Austria. Born in Vienna in 1797, Archduchess Maria Leopoldina was the daughter of Francis I, the last Holy Roman Emperor and first Emperor of Austria. Her childhood was steeped in the conservative court of Vienna, yet she was given an exceptionally broad and progressive education. Unlike many royal princesses, Leopoldina was not just tutored in languages, music, and embroidery. She developed a profound passion for natural sciences, particularly botany, mineralogy, and zoology. She avidly collected botanical specimens, studied various species, and corresponded with leading scientists of her day. This intellectual curiosity, encouraged by her father, set her apart and would later prove invaluable in her new world. In 1817, at the age of 20, Leopoldina was married by proxy to Dom Pedro, the Crown Prince of Portugal and Brazil. The marriage was arranged to solidify political ties between the Austrian Empire and the Portuguese monarchy, particularly given the importance of Brazil as Portugal's wealthiest colony. Her journey to Brazil was an epic undertaking, a long sea voyage that brought her to a land utterly different from the refined courts of Europe. She arrived in Rio de Janeiro to a grand reception, eager to embrace her new role as the future empress of a vast exotic land. Leopoldina quickly adapted to her new home, despite the cultural shock and the complexities of the Portuguese court in Brazil. Her scientific curiosity made her a keen observer of the unique flora and fauna of Brazil. She employed naturalists and artists to document the country's biodiversity, contributing significantly to European scientific knowledge of the Amazon rainforest and other regions. Her personal collection of botanical specimens and minerals became renowned, and her patronage helped establish scientific institutions in Brazil. She corresponded with European scientists, sharing her findings and advocating for the scientific exploration of her new homeland. Her marriage to Pedro was at times turbulent. Pedro was ninar but restless, often engaging in extramarital affairs. Despite these personal challenges, Leopoldina remained steadfast in her duty to her adopted country and to her children. She learned to navigate the intricacies of Brazilian politics, developing a keen understanding of the country's aspirations and growing desire for independence from Portugal. She recognized the unique identity of Brazil and became deeply committed to its future. The political climate was increasingly tense. Portugal, after the Napoleonic Wars, sought to reassert its control over Brazil, treating it more as a colony than a co-kingdom. This sparked strong resentment among the Brazilian elite and common people. Pedro, despite his Portuguese heritage, was sympathetic to Brazilian aspirations, but often wavered in his resolve. It was Leopoldina, with her sharp intellect and political foresight, who consistently urged him towards independence. She understood that a decisive break was necessary for Brazil's prosperity and stability. In 1822, with Pedro absent on a trip to Sao Paulo, the Portuguese Cortes Parliament issued decrees that effectively aimed to strip Brazil of its autonomy and recall Pedro to Lisbon. This was the tipping point. Leopoldina, who had been appointed regent during her husband's absence, understood the gravity of the situation. She convened the Council of State, and with their support made a momentous decision. On September 2, 1822, she signed the decree proclaiming Brazil's independence from Portugal and urging Pedro to declare it formally. Her bold action provided the critical impetus. When Pedro received the news of the Portuguese decrees and Leopoldina's urgent appeal, he was on the banks of the Ipiranga River. Inspired by her decisive action, he famously declared, "Independence or death, a moment that sealed Brazil's future as an independent nation." Leopoldina's role in this pivotal event cannot be overstated. She was the one who, in a moment of extreme crisis, exercised the authority of the crown, made the crucial decision, and provided the necessary political momentum for the declaration of independence. She became Brazil's first empress when Pedro was crowned emperor, Pedro I. As Empress, Leopoldina continued to support intellectual and scientific development in Brazil. She used her position to promote education and cultural institutions, recognizing their importance for a newly independent nation. Her influence, however, was not limited to culture and science. She remained a trusted advisor to Pedro, particularly on matters of foreign policy. She fostered diplomatic ties with European powers, helping Brazil gain international recognition for its independence. Her life was tragically cut short in 1826, at the age of 29, but her legacy as a key figure in Brazil's independence, a patron of science, and a woman of remarkable intellect, endured. Maria Leopoldina, the Habsburg Archduchess, became a foundational figure in the history of the South American nation, shaping its very birth and its early identity. Number 6. Maria Christina, Duchess of Teschen. Born in 1742, Archduchess Maria Christina was one of the many children of the formidable Empress Maria Theresa, and Emperor Francis I. In a family where most royal marriages were arranged for political gain, Maria Christina stood out. She was her mother's favorite daughter, a lively and intelligent child, and possessed a talent for art. Unlike her siblings who were destined for strategic alliances across Europe, Maria Christina fell deeply in love with Prince Albert of Saxony, Duke of Teschen. Their affection was genuine and mutual, a rare occurrence in the gilded cages of royalty. Against the conventions of the time and defying the expectations that her marriage would serve the empire, Maria Theresa granted her favorite daughter permission to marry for love. This decision, an extraordinary indulgence for the empress, spoke volumes about the special bond between mother and daughter. Maria, Christina, and Albert were married in 1766, a joyful occasion that contrasted sharply with the more somber, politically motivated unions of her siblings. Their marriage was a happy and enduring one, characterized by intellectual companionship and mutual respect. Maria Christina's influence began to truly blossom when, in 1781, she and her husband were appointed joint governors general of the Austrian Netherlands, a region corresponding to modern-day Belgium and Luxembourg. This was a significant appointment, placing them at the head of a prosperous but politically complex territory. The Austrian Netherlands, though a Habsburg possession, enjoyed considerable autonomy, and its people were fiercely protective of their traditional rights and privileges. Maria Christina and Albert arrived in Brussels, tasked with administering the region, maintaining order, and implementing reforms aimed at centralizing Habsburg control, often clashing with local interests. As Governor-General, Maria Christina was no mere figurehead. She actively participated in governance, working alongside Albert in administrative and diplomatic matters. They established a court that was celebrated for its intellectual vibrancy and artistic patronage, reflecting Maria Christina's own cultured sensibilities. They were proponents of Enlightenment ideals, supporting advancements in science, education, and social welfare. Their tenure saw the promotion of trade and industry and efforts to modernize the administration of the territory. They worked to improve infrastructure and promote public health, demonstrating a progressive approach to governance. One of their most lasting contributions was their immense patronage of the arts. Maria Christina, with her own artistic talents, understood the power of culture. They amassed a vast and impressive art collection, including drawings, prints, and books, which eventually formed the core of the Albertina Museum in Vienna, one of the world's most important graphic arts collections. They also supported musicians, writers, and artists. Transforming Brussels into a cultural hub, their court became a magnet for intellectuals and creatives, fostering an environment of innovation and artistic expression that left an indelible mark on the region. However, their enlightened rule was not without challenges. Their efforts to implement reforms, particularly those that aimed to centralize power and reduce local autonomy, often met with resistance from the fiercely independent Brabantines. The turbulent political climate of the late 18th century, with the French Revolution looming, further complicated their position. Popular discontent simmered beneath the surface, eventually leading to the Brabant Revolution in 1789, which temporarily forced Maria Christina and Albert to flee Brussels. This uprising, fueled by opposition to perceived Habsburg overreach and influenced by revolutionary ideas from France, marked a difficult period for the governors. Despite this upheaval, Maria Christina's commitment to her role remained. She and Albert eventually returned to Brussels in 1790, but the political situation remained precarious. The subsequent French invasion of the Austrian Netherlands in 1792 ultimately ended their rule, and the Habsburg presence in the region. They were forced into permanent exile, eventually settling in Vienna. Maria Christina's life demonstrates how a Habsburg woman, through a rare marriage of love, could still wield significant influence. She governed a complex territory, balancing the demands of her imperial family with the needs of her subjects. Her support for the Enlightenment, her passion for the arts, and her active participation in administration left a profound cultural and historical legacy. Maria Christina, the favorite daughter who married for love, shaped a significant part of the Habsburg Empire through her progressive rule and enduring artistic patronage. Number 5. Maria Carolina of Austria, Queen of Naples and Sicily. Born in 1752, Archduchess Maria Carolina was the 13th child of Empress Maria Theresa and Emperor Francis I. Her childhood in Vienna was shaped by her mother's formidable presence. She was exceptionally intelligent, strong-willed, and possessed a keen political mind, qualities that would soon be tested in a kingdom far from home. At the age of 16, in 1768, she was sent to Naples to marry King Ferdinand IV of Naples and Sicily, a union intended to secure Habsburg influence in southern Italy. Her older sister, Maria Scioscia, had been the original bride-to-be but tragically died of smallpox just before the wedding, thrusting Maria Carolina into the role. Upon her arrival in Naples, Maria Carolina found a court that was far less sophisticated than Vienna's. Her husband Ferdinand was a pleasure-loving monarch, more interested in hunting and fishing than in matters of state. This created a power vacuum that Maria Carolina, with her formidable intellect and ambitious nature, quickly filled. The marriage treaty contained a clause stating that once Maria Carolina bore a son, she would be granted a seat on the council of state. True to her determination, she fulfilled this duty, giving birth to a son in 1775. She then immediately asserted her right to participate in governance, a move that reshaped the power dynamics of the kingdom. Maria Carolina quickly became the de facto ruler of the Kingdom of Naples and Sicily. She systematically replaced her husband's old advisors with her own trusted allies, loyal to her and to the Habsburg interests. She focused on strengthening the military, reforming the navy, and modernizing the kingdom's administration. She established a secret police force to monitor dissent, particularly in the tumultuous period leading up to the French Revolution. Her policies reflected a desire for enlightened reform, but also a firm hand in controlling the populace that was increasingly exposed to new revolutionary ideas from France. Her political stance was profoundly shaped by the French Revolution and the execution of her sister, Marie Antoinette, in 1793. This event fueled Maria Carolina's fierce anti-revolutionary sentiments and her unwavering commitment to absolute monarchy. She became a staunch ally of Great Britain, particularly through her friendship with Emma Hamilton, the wife of the British ambassador, and Horatio Nelson, the British admiral. She used these connections to secure British naval support against French expansionism in the Mediterranean. Her court became a hub of anti-French sentiment, and she played a significant role in forming anti-Napoleonic coalitions. The Napoleonic Wars brought immense upheaval to her kingdom. French invasion attempts and the constant threat from Napoleon forced Maria Carolina and Ferdinand to flee Naples, multiple times seeking refuge in Sicily under British protection. These exiles were filled with tension and hardship, but Maria Carolina's resolve never wavered. She continued to govern from afar, issuing decrees, managing finances, and trying to rally support for her cause. Her correspondence with her children and other European rulers reveals her political acumen, her strategic thinking, and her deep sense of responsibility for her kingdom. Maria Carolina's efforts to maintain her family's rule and resist French dominance were relentless. She oversaw the kingdom's foreign policy, often acting independently of her husband and even at times in defiance of her Austrian relatives. She implemented economic reforms aimed at boosting trade and agriculture, recognizing the need for a strong economic base to support her military ambitions. She was a demanding ruler, but also one who understood the complexities of governance and the delicate balance of power in Europe. Despite her immense influence and her active role in the state, Maria Carolina faced growing opposition from within her own kingdom and from external powers, particularly Great Britain, which eventually pressured Ferdinand. She was forced to return to Austria, where she died in 1814, shortly after Napoleon's first abdication. Her life was a testament to the powerful role a queen consort could play. When a husband was disengaged, Maria Carolina The Habsburg princess, who became Queen of Naples and Sicily, reshaped the politics of southern Italy, defied Napoleon, and left an indelible mark on European diplomacy through her fierce will and unwavering commitment to her throne. Number 4. Margaret of Austria, Duchess of Savoy. Born in 1480, Archduchess Margaret of Austria was the daughter of Emperor Maximilian I and Mary Duchess of Burgundy. Her life began in a whirlwind of dynastic ambition and political strategy. At just 2 years old, she was betrothed to Charles VIII of France, a marriage intended to forge a crucial alliance and resolve territorial disputes between the Habsburgs and France. She was sent to the French court to be raised, becoming a Dauphine of France. However, this engagement was ultimately broken when Charles VIII chose to marry Anne of Brittany for strategic reasons, a profound personal and political humiliation for the young Margaret. Her second betrothal was to John, Prince of Asturias, the heir to the unified crowns of Castile and Aragon in Spain. This marriage in 1497 was designed to link the Habsburgs with the powerful new Spanish monarchy, further consolidating the family's growing influence. Margaret traveled to Spain and married John, but tragedy struck swiftly. Just 6 months into their marriage, John died, leaving Margaret a young widow and pregnant. The child was stillborn, leaving her without an heir, and once again, without a husband, and without the crucial connection to the Spanish throne. Despite these personal misfortunes, Margaret's resilience and political acumen were evident. Her third marriage was to Philibert, the second Duke of Savoy, in 1501. This was a union of genuine affection, a rarity for royals of her time. They shared a love for culture and intellectual pursuits, but this happiness was also short-lived, as Philibert died in 1504, leaving Margaret a widow for the second time. At 24, she chose not to remarry, deciding instead to dedicate herself to governance and her family's interests. Her most significant role began in 1507 when her father, Emperor Maximilian I, appointed her governor of the Habsburg Netherlands. This vast territory, comprising modern-day Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, was economically rich but politically complex. Margaret was tasked with governing on behalf of her young nephew, Charles, the future emperor, Charles V, who was still a child. She would later serve as regent for her niece. This was an unprecedented appointment, placing a woman in such a high position of authority. Margaret proved to be an exceptionally capable ruler and diplomat. She managed the diverse interests of the Dutch provinces, maintained order, and defended Habsburg possessions against French expansionism. Her court in Mechelen became a vibrant center of Renaissance culture and learning, attracting scholars, artists, and humanists from across Europe. She was a discerning patron of the arts, commissioning magnificent buildings, tapestries, and illuminated manuscripts. Her private library was renowned for its extensive collection of books reflecting her own deep intellectual curiosity. She nurtured the young Charles, guiding his education and preparing him for his immense future responsibilities. One of Margaret's most enduring legacies was her diplomatic prowess. She was a skilled negotiator, known for her sharp mind and ability to navigate complex political landscapes. Her finest moment in this regard came in 1529, when she, alongside Louise of Savoy, mother of King Francis I of France, negotiated the Ladies' Peace of Cambrai. This treaty was a landmark agreement that ended another phase of the long-standing Italian wars between the Habsburgs and France. The fact that two women, representing their powerful male relatives, were able to broker such a significant peace treaty speaks volumes about their influence and diplomatic skill. She successfully advanced Habsburg interests, demonstrating that a woman could be a formidable player on the European diplomatic stage. Margaret also understood the importance of economic prosperity for her territories. She encouraged trade and industry, fostering the wealth that made the Low Countries a jewel in the Habsburg crown. She implemented legal reforms and ensured the efficient administration of justice. Her rule provided a period of relative stability and prosperity for the Netherlands, a stark contrast to the constant warfare that plagued much of the rest of Europe. Margaret died in 1530, having established a powerful precedent for female leadership within the Habsburg dynasty. Her influence extended far beyond her personal territories. She was a key advisor to her father and her nephew, Charles V, helping to shape the early years of his immense reign. Margaret of Austria, the princess who suffered personal losses but never lost her resolve, transformed the Habsburg Netherlands into a cultural and political powerhouse and proved that a woman could wield immense power through intellect, diplomacy, and astute governance. Number 3. Marie Antoinette, Queen of France. Born in Vienna in 1755, Archduchess Maria Antonia was the 15th child of Empress Maria Theresa and Empress Zita had received a royal. Playful and charming, she was chosen to be the bride of the Dauphin of France, the future Louis XVI, as part of a strategic alliance between the Habsburgs and the Bourbons. At the tender age of 14, she left her familiar world behind and traveled to France, arriving as a symbol of peace between two powerful, long-rival dynasties. Her arrival at the French court was met with immense spectacle and scrutiny. She married Louis in 1770 and became Dauphine and then Queen of France in 1774. Upon Louis XV's death, from the beginning, Marie Antoinette struggled to adapt to the rigid etiquette and political intrigue of Versailles. Her natural vivacity and a perceived lack of solemnity often clashed with the expectations of the ancient French monarchy. She was initially popular, admired for her beauty and youth, but this public sentiment would not last. Marie Antoinette's early years as queen were marked by a focus on fashion, elaborate hairfalls, and extravagant entertainment, particularly at the Petit Trianon, a small palace on the grounds of Versailles granted to her by Louis XVI. She introduced new trends in clothing and hairdressing, creating elaborate coiffures and styles that were emulated across Europe. While she was simply following the fashion of the time and indeed influencing it, these expenses and her perceived frivolousness alienated her from a populace increasingly burdened by poverty and taxation. The popular press, often fueled by political opponents, began to paint her as Madame Deficit, a symbol of royal excess and indifference to the suffering of her people. Her influence on court life and fashion was undeniable. She transformed the traditional court dress into lighter, more natural styles, and her hairstyles, such as the pouf, were widely imitated. She became a style icon, setting trends that shaped European fashion for decades. However, this influence also came at a steep price, contributing to her declining public image. The famous affair of the diamond necklace in 1785, though she was innocent, further damaged her reputation, cementing the perception of her as extravagant and untrustworthy. As the French Revolution began to simmer and then erupt, Marie Antoinette found herself at the heart of the storm. Initially, she struggled to grasp the gravity of the situation, often urging Louis XVI to take a firmer stance against the revolutionaries. She was deeply loyal to the monarchy, and her family clinging to the belief in their divine right to rule. She became a rallying point for royalists and a powerful symbol of the old regime for revolutionaries. Her presence, her Habsburg connections, and her perceived arrogance fueled the anti-monarchical sentiment. During the revolutionary years, Marie Antoinette's character underwent a profound transformation. From the frivolous queen, she became a defiant and courageous mother and wife. Facing unimaginable pressures, she advised Louis XVI, urging him to resist concessions, though her advice often went unheeded or proved counterproductive. She played a key role in the family's attempted escape from Paris, known as the Flight to Varennes in 1791, hoping to rally loyal forces. The failure of this escape sealed their fate, further eroding public trust and accelerating the move towards a republic. Imprisoned with her family, Marie Antoinette endured public humiliation and the loss of her loved ones. Her dignified conduct during her trial, where she was accused of treason and even incest, surprised many. She refused to betray her principles or her family. On October 16, 1793, at the age of 37, Marie Antoinette was taken to the guillotine. Her execution marked a brutal end to an era and became a powerful symbol of the revolution's radicalism. Marie Antoinette's influence was less about direct political power and more about her symbolic role. She became the embodiment of a crumbling system, the target of a nation's anger, and the face of the tragic end of absolute monarchy in France. Her life story, from innocent Austrian princess to the martyred Queen of France, continues to captivate. She shaped the course of history, not through her governance, but through her symbolic representation, her tragic fate, and her unwitting role as a catalyst for revolutionary change that reshaped not only France, but Europe. Number 2. Elisabeth Sisi of Austria. Born in 1837, Duchess Elisabeth in Bavaria, known affectionately as Sisi, belonged to a cadet branch of the Wittelsbach family, but her grandmother was a sister of Emperor Francis I, giving her strong Habsburg connections. Her childhood was unconventional, for a royal spent largely in the relaxed atmosphere of Pusenhofen Castle, away from the rigid strictures of court. She loved nature, riding, and poetry, developing a free-spirited and rebellious nature that would clash with the demands of her future life. In 1853, at the age of 15, Sisi met her cousin, the young Emperor Franz Joseph, the first of Austria. He was originally supposed to marry her older sister Helene, but instead fell deeply in love with Sisi's beauty and vivacity. Despite her youth and her initial reluctance, they were married in 1854, making her Empress of Austria and later Queen of Hungary. This dazzling match catapulted her from a carefree existence into the demanding, formal world of the Habsburg court, a world she would never truly embrace. From the outset, Sisi found the oppressive etiquette and constant public scrutiny of the Viennese court suffocating. She struggled with her role as empress, particularly the pressures of producing an heir and conforming to strict protocols. Her relationship with her mother-in-law, Archduchess Sophie, was strained, adding to her unhappiness. Sisi soon withdrew from court life, seeking solace in extensive travel, poetry, riding, and an obsessive pursuit of physical perfection. Her legendary beauty, particularly her famously long, rich chestnut hair, became a source of fascination. Sisi's influence on the court and wider European society was largely cultural and symbolic. She set new trends in fashion and beauty, inspiring women across the continent to emulate her elaborate hairstyles, slender figure, and unique sense of style. Her insistence on a rigorous beauty regimen, including daily exercise, strict diets, and hours spent caring for her hair, was extraordinary for her time. She became a cult figure, admired for her beauty and perceived tragic aura, yet she remained an enigma to most. Her strong personal will and unconventional behavior also had a subtle yet profound political impact. While she largely avoided direct political involvement, her deep affection for Hungary and its people played a crucial role in the Austro-Hungarian Compromise of 1867. She used her influence with Franz Joseph to advocate for Hungarian interests, learning the language and developing strong relationships with Hungarian nobles. Her personal efforts helped bridge the gap between Vienna and Budapest, leading to the creation of the dual monarchy, and her coronation as Queen of Hungary, a title she cherished. However, despite this political success, Sisi remained restless and increasingly melancholic. Her life was marked by personal tragedies, including the death of her first daughter, Sophie, and the shocking suicide of her only son, Crown Prince Rudolph, in 1889. These events deepened her alienation from court life and her pursuit of freedom. She traveled almost constantly seeking new experiences and avoiding her duties in Vienna. Her passion for travel and her attempts to escape her royal cage resonated with a growing sense of individualism in society. Sisi's life ended tragically in 1898. While walking by Lake Geneva, she was assassinated by an Italian anarchist, Luigi Lucchini, who stabbed her with a sharpened needle. Her death sent shockwaves across Europe, becoming a symbol of the fragility of the old order and the rising tide of political extremism. Elisabeth's influence was not that of a reforming ruler or a diplomatic powerhouse. Instead, she influenced her age through her image, her personal rebellion against the constraints of royalty, and her symbolic power. She became a romantic, tragic figure, a beautiful queen who longed for freedom, inspiring artists, writers, and eventually, Elisabeth of Austria, the free-spirited duchess who became empress, challenged the norms of her time through her pursuit of personal liberty, and left an indelible mark on European culture. Number 1. Maria Theresa. Born in 1717, Archduchess Maria Theresa was the eldest daughter of Emperor Charles VI. Her early life was spent in the glittering yet conservative court of Vienna. Unlike her male cousins, Maria Theresa was not trained for direct rule. As her father fully expected to produce a male heir, she received a typical education for a princess, focusing on languages, music, and the arts. But she also developed a strong sense of duty and a keen intelligence that would serve her well. The lack of a male heir, however, created a dangerous situation for the Habsburg dynasty. Charles VI had issued the Pragmatic Sanction, a decree designed to ensure his daughter's right to inherit all Habsburg lands, but its validity was uncertain in the eyes of Europe's powerful rulers. In 1736, Maria Theresa married Francis Stephen of Lorraine, a man she genuinely loved and who would eventually become Holy Roman Emperor. Their marriage was a happy one, producing 16 children, including the future emperors Joseph II and Leopold II and the infamous Marie Antoinette. Maria Theresa relished her role as a mother, but destiny had a far grander and more challenging path laid out for her. In 1740, Emperor Charles VI died, and Maria Theresa, at 23 years old, inherited the vast and diverse Habsburg dominions: Austria, Bohemia, Hungary, and the Austrian Netherlands. Prussia, under Frederick the Great, invaded Silesia, sparking the War of the Austrian Succession. This conflict plunged Maria Theresa into a desperate fight to defend her inheritance against a coalition of European powers who saw an opportunity. Dismember the Habsburg Empire against overwhelming odds. Maria Theresa refused to yield. She famously appealed to the Hungarian Diet for support, appearing before them with her infant son Joseph in her arms. Her courageous plea resonated, and the Hungarian nobility rallied to her cause. This moment cemented her legendary status. The war raged for 8 years, but Maria Theresa, through sheer determination and a burgeoning political skill, managed to secure most of her lands, though Silesia was lost. This war marked a crucial turning point, transforming her from an inexperienced ruler into a hardened and pragmatic stateswoman. Maria Theresa then embarked on a series of sweeping reforms that fundamentally reshaped the Habsburg monarchy and laid the groundwork for a modern state. She recognized that the old decentralized system was inefficient and vulnerable. She centralized the administration, creating a more professional bureaucracy and a unified financial system. She reformed the military, building a stronger and more disciplined army capable of defending her vast territories. She founded military academies, including the prestigious Theresian Military Academy, to train officers, ensuring a steady supply of skilled commanders. Her influence extended deeply into education and social welfare. She established numerous schools, including the University of Innsbruck, and reformed the education system, making it more accessible to commoners. She also introduced legal reforms codifying laws and limiting the power of the nobility, initiating the gradual abolition of serfdom. Her policies were driven by a desire for enlightened absolutism, strengthening the state and improving the lives of her subjects, all under her firm control. She introduced a unified system of taxation, ensuring that all classes contributed to the state, a radical departure from previous practices. Maria Theresa was also a shrewd diplomat. She oversaw the diplomatic revolution of 1756, abandoning Austria's long-standing alliance with Great Britain in favor of an alliance with France, a move that reshaped the European balance of power. This alliance, designed to isolate Prussia, led to the 7 Years' War, another massive conflict that, though costly, demonstrated Austria's renewed strength. As a mother of 16, she managed to balance her imperial duties with raising a massive family. She meticulously oversaw her children's education and often personally intervened in their marriages, using them as instruments of diplomacy to secure alliances across Europe. Her influence on her children, particularly her reform-minded sons, Joseph and Leopold, and her ill-fated daughter, Marie Antoinette, was profound, shaping their characters and their future roles in European history. Maria Theresa ruled for 40 years, an extraordinary reign that saw her transform a struggling, fragmented empire into a powerful, centralized state. She was a deeply religious woman, but also a pragmatic ruler, constantly adapting and innovating. Her determination, intelligence, and unwavering commitment to her dynasty left an indelible mark on Austria and on the wider history of Europe. Maria Theresa, the only female ruler of the Habsburg dominions, not only defended her empire against all odds, but actively rebuilt it, creating a powerful legacy of reform and strength that shaped centuries of European history.